The waiting room felt colder than it should have been. Maya pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders and tried to stop her leg from bouncing. Around her, other musicians sat with the kind of confidence that comes from years of expensive training and prestigious schools. They held themselves differently, spoke differently. Even their instrument cases looked more expensive than anything Maya owned. She clutched her worn notebook closer to her chest. The edges were frayed from being opened and closed 1,000 times. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, corrections, and the melody that had consumed her life for the past 3 months. Her life's work, really, if she was being honest. A woman in a sharp black suit walked through with a clipboard, checking names off a list. She stopped when she reached Maya. Name? Maya Chen. The woman's pen hovered over the paper. And you're competing in the advanced composition category? Maya nodded, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. She knew what the woman was thinking. At 19, she was at least 5 years younger than anyone else in this room. Maybe more. All right then. You'll be called when it's your turn. Good luck. The woman moved on, but Maya caught the slight raise of her eyebrow. That small gesture said everything. Doubt, surprise, maybe even pity. Maya tried to focus on her breathing like her community college music teacher had taught her. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. But it was hard to concentrate with all the noise around her. To her left, a young man in an expensive suit was talking loudly on his phone. Yeah, I'm at Steinhardt now. Just waiting to show these judges what real composition looks like. He laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Most of these people don't stand a chance. I mean, I studied under Professor Wilhelm at Juilliard. This is basically a formality at this point. His name was James, Maya had learned from overhearing earlier conversations. James Rothstein, 3rd-generation musician. His grandfather had played at Carnegie Hall. His father conducted for the Boston Symphony. Music wasn't just in his blood, it was his inheritance. Maya looked down at her hands. Her mother's hands, people always said. Small and quick, with calluses in all the wrong places from years of helping Lynn clean houses on weekends when money got really tight. A girl with perfect posture sat across from Maya, reviewing a thick stack of sheet music. Her composition looked incredibly complex, filled with notations Maya had only read about in textbooks. The girl caught Maya staring and offered a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach the eyes. First time at Steinhardt? The girl asked. Maya nodded. Me too. Well, first time competing. I've attended performances here since I was 8. She gestured at her music. I've been working on this piece for 2 years. My instructor at Manhattan School of Music helped me refine it. What are you performing? Maya's throat felt dry. It's a piece I wrote, based on some melodies my mom used to hum. The girl's smile faltered slightly. Oh, that's sweet. Sweet. The word hung in the air like a judgment. Not impressive. Not sophisticated. Sweet. Before Maya could respond, James ended his phone call and turned toward them. He had the look of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. Did I hear you say you're playing your mom's humming? He didn't even try to hide his amusement. For the Steinhardt competition? Maya felt her face burn. It's more complex than that. I developed it into a full composition with... No, I'm sure it's very touching, James interrupted, his tone dripping with false sincerity. It's just, this is a professional competition. The judges are looking for technical innovation, complex harmonic structures, sophisticated rhythmic patterns, not... He waved his hand vaguely. Not lullabies. The girl with perfect posture looked uncomfortable but said nothing. A few other competitors nearby had stopped their conversations to listen. Maybe you'd be better suited for the community showcase next month, James continued. I think they have a category for folk music or something. No shame in playing to your level. Maya's hands tightened around her notebook. She wanted to tell him that her piece had all those things he mentioned. That she'd spent countless hours studying theory, analyzing Bach and Debussy and Stravinsky. That her melody might have started simple, but it had grown into something that made her professors cry when she played it for them. But the words stuck in her throat. Because a small part of her wondered if James was right. Who was she to be here? A girl from Queens with a second-hand keyboard and a community college education, competing against people who'd had private tutors since they were 5 years old. James's phone rang again, and he turned away, already forgetting the conversation. The girl with perfect posture went back to her sheet music. The moment passed like it had never happened, but it had happened. And now Maya's confidence, already fragile, felt like it might shatter completely. She opened her notebook and looked at the first page. Her mother's melody written in careful notation. Below it, her own development of the theme. She remembered the night she'd written this part, sitting at their tiny kitchen table at 3 a.m, while her mom slept in the next room. The melody had come to her so clearly, like Lynn was humming it directly into her ear. That memory steadied her. She wasn't here for James or any of these other musicians. She was here for her mom. For every double shift Lynn had worked to pay for Maya's lessons, for every time Lynn had hummed while doing dishes, creating beauty in the middle of exhaustion, for all the melodies that were slowly disappearing from Lynn's mind, one forgotten note at a time. A voice echoed through the waiting room. Number 47. Maya Chen, you're up next. Maya stood on shaky legs. Her notebook felt like it weighed 100 pounds. As she walked toward the door that led to the performance hall, she heard James say something to the person next to him. She couldn't make out the words, but she heard the laughter that followed. The coordinator held the door open for her. Beyond it, Maya could see the massive performance hall, row after row of empty seats rising up into darkness. And there at the front, 5 judges sat behind a long table. 5 of the most respected musicians and composers in the country. 5 people who could change her life with a single decision. The grand piano sat in the center of the stage, spotlit and waiting. Maya took a deep breath. Her hands had stopped shaking. Something inside her had shifted during that walk from the waiting room. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was determination. Maybe it was just the simple knowledge that she had nothing left to lose. She stepped through the door, and it closed behind her with a soft click. The room was silent except for the sound of her footsteps on the wooden floor. Each step echoed. Each step brought her closer to the moment that would prove whether she belonged here or not. Maya reached the piano and sat down. The bench was perfectly adjusted. The keys gleamed under the lights. She placed her hands in position, fingers curved, wrists relaxed. This was it. She looked up at the judges. One of them, an older woman with silver hair, nodded encouragingly. Maya closed her eyes and saw her mother's face. Heard her mother's voice. Felt her mother's love in every note she was about to play. She began. Maya's fingers hovered over the keys, but her mind drifted backward. She couldn't help it. This moment had been built on thousands of small moments that came before. She was 7 years old again, sitting on the floor of their studio apartment in Queens. Her mom, Lynn, was humming while folding laundry. It wasn't any song Maya recognized from the radio. It was something else, something that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her mother. "Mama, what song is that?" Lynn had looked up, surprised. "Song? I'm just making noise, baby." But it wasn't just noise. Even at 7, Maya knew that. It had a pattern, a feeling. It made the small apartment feel bigger somehow, like the walls could breathe. Lynn had never taken a music lesson in her life. She'd grown up in a village outside Guangzhou, where there was barely enough money for food, let alone piano teachers. When she came to America at 22, she'd worked every job she could find. Restaurants, laundromats, cleaning offices at night when the city slept. But the music never left her. She hummed while washing dishes, tapped rhythms on the subway pole during her commute, created melodies out of the chaos of their neighborhood, the sirens and street vendors and kids playing basketball in the park below their window. Maya remembered the day everything changed. She was 9. A music teacher had visited her elementary school, demonstrating different instruments. Maya had been mesmerized by the piano. When she came home, she'd tried to recreate the sounds using an old toy keyboard she'd found at a yard sale. Most of the keys didn't even work. Lynn had watched her daughter hunt for melodies on that broken keyboard for 3 days straight. On the 4th day, she came home from her shift at the hospital with a second-hand keyboard she'd found at a thrift store. It had cost her a week's worth of grocery money. "For you," Lynn had said simply, setting it on their kitchen table. "Learn." Maya had thrown her arms around her mother's waist. "We'll learn together, Mama. You can learn too." But Lynn had shaken her head. "No time for me. I work, you learn." That's how it works, so Maya learned. Free lessons at the community center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. YouTube videos when she got stuck. Library books about music theory that she read until the pages fell out. And always, her mother's humming in the background. The soundtrack of their life. When Maya turned 16, she'd gotten good enough to play at the community center's holiday concert. Lynn had sat in the front row, still wearing her hospital janitorial uniform because she'd come straight from work. She'd cried through the entire performance afterward. Maya had asked why she was crying. "Because you took the music I keep inside," Lynn had said, touching her chest. "And you made it real. You made it something people can hear." That was when Maya understood. Her mother had all this music trapped inside her with no way to let it out. No training, no time, no opportunity. Just melodies that lived and died in their small apartment, heard by no one but Maya. 2 years later, Maya had gotten into community college on a partial scholarship. It wasn't Juilliard. It wasn't Manhattan School of Music, but it was something. Her music professor, Mr. Rodriguez, had seen potential in her. He'd stayed late after class to work with her, never charging extra. He'd written her recommendation for this competition. "You have something most of my students will never have," he'd told her once. "You have something to say. Technical skill can be taught. But having a reason to play? That's rare." Then came the doctor's appointment. 3 months ago. Maya had taken the day off from her part-time job at the bookstore to go with her mom. Lynn had been forgetting things. Small things at first. Where she'd put her keys. What day it was. But then bigger things. She'd gotten lost coming home from the grocery store she'd shopped at for 15 years. She'd forgotten she'd already made dinner and started making it again. The doctor had been kind but direct. Early onset dementia. Probably genetic. Likely to progress quickly. Maya had held her mother's hand in that cold examination room and felt her entire world tilt. Lynn had been quiet on the subway ride home, staring out the window at the city she'd made her home. That night, Maya had woken at 2 a.m. to find her mother sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. "Mama, you okay?" Lynn had looked up, her eyes wet. "I can't remember the song." "What song?" "My mother's song. The one she sang to me when I was small. I've been trying to remember it all night, but it's gone." She'd pressed her palms against her temples. "It's gone, and I don't know what else is going to go." Maya had sat down next to her mother, taking her hands. "Hum something, anything, whatever comes." Lynn had started humming. It was fragmented, uncertain. The melody would start and stop like a skipping record. But it was there. The music was still there. Maya had grabbed a piece of paper and started writing. Notation, rhythms, everything her mother hummed. She captured it. They'd sat there until sunrise, Lynn humming fragments of melodies and Maya transcribing them as fast as she could. It became their routine. Every night, Maya would sit with her mother and collect the melodies before they disappeared forever. Some nights Lynn could barely remember 3 notes in a row. Other nights, whole songs would pour out of her like water. Maya had started weaving these fragments together. A melody from Tuesday night connected to a rhythm from Thursday. A harmony her mother had hummed while making tea matched perfectly with a tune from 2 weeks ago. Slowly, a composition had emerged. Something that was part Lynn, part Maya. Past and present, memory and preservation. This was the piece she'd submitted to the Steinhardt competition. Not because she thought she'd win, but because she needed it to exist somewhere outside of their apartment. She needed proof that her mother's music had mattered, that it had been real. The scholarship money would help, of course. Community college was affordable, but it still stretched their budget thin. Lynn had been making noises about taking on extra shifts, which was impossible now. The doctors had said she shouldn't work at all anymore, but Lynn being Lynn, she'd refused to stop. The music degree Maya wanted, the conservatory education that could take her places, that was expensive. Too expensive for a janitor's daughter. But that wasn't why Maya was really here. She was here because 2 weeks ago her mother had looked at her without recognition, just for a moment. Just 5 seconds where Lynn's eyes had been completely blank like she was looking at a stranger. Then the moment had passed, and Lynn had smiled and said, "There's my girl." But Maya had seen it. The beginning of the end. The first glimpse of a future where her mother wouldn't know her name. Wouldn't know her own name. Wouldn't know anything except maybe, if Maya was lucky, the melodies that had lived inside her for 53 years. So Maya had to do this. Had to take those melodies and make them permanent. Had to prove they mattered. Had to show her mother, while Lynn could still understand, that the music hadn't been wasted, that it had gone somewhere, that it would live on. The waiting room seemed very far away now. James and his sneering seemed insignificant. The judges were just people. The competition was just a moment. What mattered was the promise Maya had made to herself that night in the doctor's office. She would take every piece of music her mother had ever created, every hummed melody and tapped rhythm, and she would build something beautiful from it, something that would exist long after both of them were gone. Maya opened her eyes. Her hands were steady now, ready. She took one last breath and began to play. The first notes were quiet, almost too quiet. Maya played the opening melody exactly as her mother had hummed it that first night at the kitchen table. Simple, childlike, the kind of tune you might sing to help a baby fall asleep. In the audience, she heard a slight shuffle, someone shifting in their seat. She didn't look up. Couldn't look up. If she saw their faces, saw their judgment, she might lose her nerve completely. The melody repeated, but this time Maya added a soft harmony underneath. Her left hand moved gently across the lower keys, supporting the tune like a mother's arm supporting a child. Still simple, still sweet. Behind the judges' table, one of the men glanced at his colleague. Maya saw it from the corner of her eye. That look, the same look James had given her in the waiting room. The look that said, "Is this really all there is?" But Maya kept playing, because this was how it had to start. This was the truth of it. Her mother's music had always been simple, pure, uncomplicated by theory or training or the need to impress anyone. The melody came around a third time, and Maya's right hand began to diverge. The tune split into two voices, then three. She was still playing her mother's melody, but now she was also playing her own response to it. A conversation between them happening in real time on the piano. Her fingers moved faster. The tempo picked up slightly. The harmonies grew richer, more complex. She added a rhythm in her left hand, syncopated, irregular. It sounded like footsteps. Quick footsteps. Rushing footsteps. This was her mother running to catch the bus to work. This was Lynn hurrying through hospital corridors, pushing a cleaning cart, always behind schedule, always trying to finish before her shift ended so she could get home to Maya. The music grew more frantic. Maya's hands raced across the keys, the melody fragmenting, scattering across different octaves. Notes collided and crashed. Dissonance crept in. This was the chaos of their life. The bills that couldn't be paid. The eviction notice they'd gotten when Maya was 12. The sound of her mother crying in the bathroom, trying to muffle the sobs so her daughter wouldn't hear. One of the judges leaned forward. The silver-haired woman, her expression had changed. Maya pressed harder into the keys. The piano rang out, filling the massive hall with sound. She was in the middle section now, the part she'd written in a single night, barely stopping to sleep. Her fingers knew where to go. She'd practiced this 1,000 times on her second-hand keyboard, with half the keys sticking and the sustain pedal broken. But this piano was perfect. This piano could handle everything she threw at it. And she threw everything. The music became a storm, angry, desperate. This was Maya's rage at the world, at genetics and disease and the unfairness of watching her mother's mind slip away, at poverty that meant Lynn couldn't afford the care she needed, at every person who'd ever looked at them like they were less than, like they didn't matter. Her shoulders ached, her wrists burned, but she kept playing. Then suddenly she pulled back. The music softened, slowed. The storm passed as quickly as it had come. Now came the part that had made Mr. Rodriguez cry when she'd first played it for him. The melody returned, but it was different now, broken into pieces. The notes would start, then stop, start again in the wrong place, circle back and try again. This was her mother forgetting. This was Lynn trying to remember her own name, trying to remember what year it was, trying to hold on to the music that had defined her entire life. Maya's eyes stung, but she blinked hard and kept playing. The melody stumbled through the broken passages, searching for itself, lost, frightened, alone. In the audience, someone made a small sound, almost like a gasp, but then Maya's left hand came in strong and steady, a bass line, solid, unshakable. This was Maya refusing to let go. This was her promise to remember when her mother couldn't, to hold the memories for both of them. The two hands worked together now. The right hand still fragmented and uncertain, the left hand constant and true. They were dancing around each other, supporting each other, completing each other. The judges were all leaning forward now. Even the man who'd looked skeptical earlier had forgotten to maintain his professional distance. His hand was pressed flat against the table, as if he could feel the vibrations of the piano through the wood. Maya built toward the climax. Her hands moved in opposite directions, stretching across the full range of the keyboard, high notes like stars, low notes like the earth, and in between the melody, transformed now into something bigger than her mother had ever imagined it could be. This was what Mr. Rodriguez had meant. This was having something to say. Maya wasn't just playing music. She was telling a story. She was preserving a life. She was taking all the love and fear and hope and pain of the past 19 years and pouring it into this instrument, into this moment, into this room where people had come expecting to hear technical exercises and impressive fingerwork. Instead, they were hearing the truth of what it meant to love someone whose mind was disappearing, what it meant to be poor and talented and desperate to make something beautiful out of the struggle, what it meant to carry your mother's dreams because she'd never had the chance to carry them herself. The climax hit like a wave. Maya's whole body moved with the music. She rocked forward and back, her arms extending and contracting, pulling every possible sound from the piano. The hall seemed to shake with it. The chandelier above might have been swaying, or maybe that was just her vision blurring. Then she began the descent. Gradually, carefully, she brought the music back down. The complexity unwound itself. The layers peeled away one by one. The harmonies simplified. The rhythm steadied and slowed. And finally, after 5 minutes that had felt like both a lifetime and a single breath, Maya returned to the beginning. The simple melody, her mother's melody, pure and unchanged, despite everything that had happened around it. She played it once through, soft and clear. The last notes hung in the air like smoke, like memory, like the smell of Lynn's cooking that used to fill their apartment on Sunday mornings. Maya lifted her hands from the keys. Silence. Complete and total silence. She sat frozen, not sure what to do, not sure what the silence meant. Was it shock? Disapproval? Had she made a fool of herself? Had James been right? Was this just a lullaby after all, dressed up in fancy clothes? Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. Then she heard something, a scraping sound. A chair pushing back. Maya looked up. The silver-haired judge was standing. Slowly, deliberately, she rose to her feet. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking slightly as she brought them together. She began to clap. The sound of her applause echoed through the hall. Lonely at first, just one person's hands meeting again and again. Then another judge stood. The skeptical man. He was clapping too. His face had completely changed. The professional mask was gone, replaced by something raw and real. One by one, all 5 judges rose to their feet. The applause grew louder, fuller. It washed over Maya like a physical force. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process what was happening. Through her blurred vision, she saw someone in the back of the hall standing up. Then another. Then another. Even the sound technician in the booth was on his feet. Maya's hands were still trembling over the piano keys. She looked down at them, her mother's hands, and thought about how Lynn would never believe this was happening. But it was happening. And for the first time since that doctor's appointment 3 months ago, Maya felt something that wasn't fear or sadness or desperate urgency. She felt hope. Maya stood on shaky legs and bowed. It felt mechanical, like her body was moving on autopilot while her brain tried to catch up with what had just happened. The applause continued, growing louder somehow, impossible as that seemed. She walked off the stage in a daze. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The coordinator who had checked her in earlier held the door open, and this time she was smiling. Really smiling. That was extraordinary, the woman whispered. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. If she opened her mouth, she might cry or laugh or make some sound that didn't belong to a serious musician at a prestigious competition. The hallway was cool and quiet after the heat of the stage lights. Maya leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her hands were still shaking. She pressed them flat against the cold concrete, trying to ground herself. "Excuse me?" Maya opened her eyes. The silver-haired judge was walking toward her. Up close, she was older than Maya had thought. Maybe 70. She moved with the careful precision of someone whose body didn't always cooperate anymore. "I'm sorry to interrupt your moment," the woman said. Her voice was gentle, cultured. British accent, Maya thought. "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell. I needed to speak with you before the deliberation. Maya straightened up, suddenly very aware of her worn cardigan and discount store shoes. Of course. I'm Maya Chen. I know who you are. Dr. Hartwell smiled, but her eyes were wet. I read your submission essay. About your mother. Maya nodded, not sure what to say. My sister has Alzheimer's, Dr. Hartwell said quietly. Margaret. She's 68. She was a botanist. Brilliant woman. Could identify any plant just by touching its leaves. Now she can't remember my name most days. I'm so sorry, Maya said softly. Dr. Hartwell waved a hand, dismissing the sympathy. What I wanted to tell you is that I've been judging this competition for 12 years. I've heard hundreds of compositions, technically perfect pieces, impressively complex works, music that shows mastery of every rule and technique. She paused, her voice catching slightly. But what you just played? That was the first time I've heard someone capture what it actually feels like.
The loss, the love.
The desperate scramble to hold on to someone who's slipping away. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. You didn't just write music, Dr. Hartwell continued. You wrote truth. And truth is the rarest thing in art. She reached out and squeezed Maya's hand. Thank you for putting into sound what I couldn't put into words. Before Maya could respond, Dr. Hartwell turned and walked back toward the deliberation room. Maya stood alone in the hallway, her hand still warm from the older woman's touch. The next hour crawled by. Maya sat in the waiting room with the other competitors. Some congratulated her. Others avoided eye contact. James sat in the corner, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked like shock. He stared at his phone without really seeing it. The girl with perfect posture approached Maya hesitantly. I've never heard anything like that. Thank you, Maya said. How long have you been studying composition? About 3 years. Seriously, I mean. The girl blinked. 3 years? I've been studying for 10. She shook her head not unkindly. You have something special. I hope you know that. Finally, the coordinator called them all back into the performance hall. The judges sat at their table, papers arranged neatly in front of them. Dr. Hartwell was in the center. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She tried to remember what Mr. Rodriguez had told her. Win or lose, you've already accomplished something just by being there. You've proven you belong. But sitting in that hall, surrounded by musicians who'd had every advantage she hadn't, Maya desperately wanted to win. Not for herself, for her mom, to prove that Lynn's music mattered. That their struggle mattered. That they mattered. Dr. Hartwell stood and cleared her throat. The room fell silent. This has been one of the most difficult deliberations we've had in years, she began. The level of talent in this room is exceptional. You should all be very proud. Maya's stomach dropped. This sounded like the beginning of a speech that ended with someone else's name. However, Dr. Hartwell continued, we had a unanimous decision. Unanimous decisions are rare for us. We usually debate for hours. She smiled slightly. This time we all knew within moments. Maya couldn't breathe. The winner of this year's Steinhardt Conservatory Composition Competition is Maya Chen. The room erupted in applause. Maya sat frozen. Those words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense, Maya. Please come up, Dr. Hartwell said. Somehow Maya's legs carried her to the front of the room. Dr. Hartwell shook her hand and presented her with a crystal trophy that caught the light and scattered rainbows across the floor. Along with this award comes a full scholarship to any conservatory of your choice, Dr. Hartwell announced. Tuition, room board, and a living stipend for 4 years. The applause grew louder. Maya clutched the trophy, feeling its weight. This piece of crystal represented everything she'd dreamed of. Everything her mother had sacrificed for. A future that had seemed impossible just hours ago. But as the other judges came forward to congratulate her, as photographers snapped pictures, as the coordinator asked her to fill out paperwork, Maya felt a strange emptiness growing inside her. She'd won. She'd actually won. But her mom wasn't here to see it. The celebration continued around her, but Maya was already thinking about the subway ride home. About their small apartment. About her mother, who might or might not remember who Maya was today, who definitely wouldn't understand what the trophy meant, who was losing pieces of herself every single day while Maya stood in this fancy hall accepting awards. After what felt like hours of handshakes and questions from the local music blog and exchange of contact, information with conservatory representatives. Maya was finally free to leave. She packed up her notebook carefully, the trophy wrapped in her cardigan to protect it on the train. James appeared beside her as she headed for the door. He looked smaller somehow, younger. "Hey," he said. Maya turned. "I was a jerk," he said simply. "In the waiting room." "I said some stupid things," Maya shrugged. "It's okay." "It's not, though," he ran a hand through his hair. "My whole life, music has been easy for me. The right schools, the right teachers, the right connections. I thought that meant I was good. But you made me realize I've never actually had anything to say. I've just been rearranging other people's ideas." He looked at her directly. "You deserved this. I hope you know that." "Thank you," Maya said quietly. He nodded and walked away. Maya stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The city noise rushed in, traffic, people shouting. A street musician playing saxophone a block away. All the sounds her mother had taught her to hear as music. She pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from Lynn. Her heart jumped with panic, then relief when she saw the voicemail notification. She pressed play. "Maya, baby? I forget what time you said you'd be home. But there's rice on the stove and I made your favorite soup. Come home soon, okay? I want to hear how it went." Her mother's voice sounded clear. Present. Good days were getting rarer, but today was a good day. Maya clutched the phone and the trophy and started walking toward the subway. She needed to get home. Needed to share this moment while her mother could still understand it. While Lynn could still be proud. The scholarship, the recognition, the validation from people like Dr. Hartwell, it all mattered. But nothing mattered as much as getting home to the person who'd made this possible. Maya ran down the subway steps, the trophy bouncing in her bag. She had news to share, and she was running out of time. The subway took forever. Maya sat clutching her bag with the trophy inside, watching the stops crawl by. Each station felt like an eternity. She counted them off in her head. 34th Street, 28th, 23rd, come on. Come on. She thought about her mother's voicemail. The clarity in Lynn's voice. Today was a good day, but how many good days were left? The doctors had said the disease would progress. Some patients declined slowly over years. Others lost themselves in months. There was no way to know which path Lynn would take. Maya had been collecting her mother's melodies for 3 months now. Some nights they'd sit together for hours, and Lynn would remember songs from her childhood, tunes from her mother and grandmother, melodies that had traveled across an ocean and through generations. Other nights Lynn could barely hum 3 notes before frustration would cloud her face. "I know this one," she'd say, her hands gesturing helplessly. "It's right here, but I can't reach it." Those were the nights that broke Maya's heart. Watching her mother search for something that used to be as natural as breathing. The subway finally reached their stop. Maya took the steps 2 at a time, emerging into the familiar chaos of their neighborhood. The evening rush had started. People poured out of buildings heading home. The bodega on the corner had its lights on. Mrs. Patel was arranging flowers outside her shop like she did every evening. Maya ran the 3 blocks to their apartment building. The elevator was broken again, so she took the stairs to the 4th floor. By the time she reached their door, she was breathless. She paused for a moment, hand on the doorknob. Inside was her mother. Inside was the person who mattered most. The scholarship, the conservatory, the future. It all meant nothing without this moment. Maya opened the door. The apartment smelled like ginger and garlic. Her mother's soup. Lynn stood at the stove, stirring a pot, humming softly. She turned when she heard the door. "There you are." I was starting to worry. Lynn's face was bright, present. Her eyes focused and clear. "How did it go?" "Did you play well?" Maya set her bag down and pulled out the trophy. It caught the kitchen light, sending little sparkles across the ceiling. Lynn's wooden spoon clattered into the pot. "What is that?" "I won, Mama. I won the whole competition." For a moment, Lynn just stared. Then her hands flew to her mouth. No, you didn't. I did. They gave me a full scholarship. 4 years. Any conservatory I want. Everything paid for." Lynn moved forward slowly, like she was afraid the trophy might disappear if she got too close. She reached out and touched it with one finger, tentative, checking if it was real. "Because of your music," she whispered. "Because of our music," Maya corrected. "Your melodies, Mama. The ones you taught me, the ones you hum every day. That's what I played." Lynn looked up at her daughter and tears started rolling down her cheeks. My humming? But I just make noise. No. Maya took her mother's hands. You make music. You always have. Beautiful music. And today hundreds of people heard it. They stood up and clapped. The judges cried. One of them told me it was the most honest music she'd ever heard. Lynn shook her head, overwhelmed. But I don't know how. I never learned. You didn't need to learn. It was always inside you. Maya squeezed her mother's hands. And now it's going to live forever. I'm going to make sure of that. Lynn pulled Maya into a fierce hug. She smelled like the lavender soap she always used and the ginger from the soup. She felt small in Maya's arms, more fragile than she used to be. When had her mother gotten so small? I'm so proud of you. Lynn whispered into Maya's shoulder. So proud I could burst. They stood there in the middle of their tiny kitchen holding each other while the soup bubbled on the stove. The trophy sat on the counter reflecting the warm light. Outside, the city roared on, but inside this moment everything was perfect. Finally, Lynn pulled back and wiped her eyes. Okay. Enough crying. You need to eat. Tell me everything while we have dinner. They sat at their small table, the same table where Maya had transcribed her mother's melodies night after night. Lynn ladled soup into bowls and listened as Maya told her about the competition, about James and his dismissive comments, about Dr. Hartwell and her sister, about the moment when the applause started and Maya thought her heart might explode. Lynn laughed and gasped in all the right places. She was completely present, completely herself. Maya tried to memorize everything about this moment. The way her mother's eyes crinkled when she smiled, the sound of her laugh, the way she reached across the table to squeeze Maya's hand when the story got emotional. After dinner, Maya pulled out her keyboard. The old one. The second-hand one her mother had bought all those years ago. Some keys still stuck. The sustain pedal still didn't work right. But it was theirs. Will you play it for me? Lynn asked. Your competition piece? Maya sat down and placed her hands on the keys. She started with the simple melody, her mother's melody, the lullaby that had started everything. Lynn's eyes widened with recognition. That's mine. That's the song I sing. Maya nodded and kept playing. She took her mother through the whole journey. The simple beginning, the building complexity, the chaos and the storm, the fragmentation and the searching, the support and the strength, the transformation and the return. When she finished, Lynn was crying again. But she was also smiling. You took the pieces of me, Lynn said softly, and you made them whole. Maya moved to sit beside her mother on the old couch they'd had since Maya was 6. That's what I'm going to keep doing, Mama. Every melody you remember, every song you hum, I'm going to capture it. I'm going to build something beautiful from all of it. So that even when... She couldn't finish the sentence. Lynn understood anyway. Even when I forget, the music will remember. Yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lynn started humming. A new melody. One Maya hadn't heard before. Or maybe an old one, surfacing after years buried in memory. Maya grabbed her notebook and started writing. The notes flowed from her mother's voice to Maya's pencil to the page. Preservation in real time. Love in action. Where did you learn that one? Maya asked, still writing. Lynn thought for a moment. My grandmother, I think. She sang it when she worked in the rice fields. Something about the morning sun. I can't remember the words. That's okay. The melody is enough. They worked together like they had for months now. Lynn humming, sometimes stopping to search for the next phrase, sometimes finding it immediately. Maya capturing every note, every pause, every breath. The scholarship meant Maya could study at the best schools, learn from the best teachers, become the musician she'd always dreamed of being. But this, sitting in their small apartment with her mother, collecting melodies that might otherwise be lost forever, this was the real education. This was what mattered. Around midnight, Lynn started to fade. The good days always ended eventually. She yawned and looked confused for a moment. I'm tired, baby. Did you have something you wanted to tell me? Maya's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. I did, I told you already, but I'll tell you again tomorrow. Okay. Lynn stood up slowly. Thank you for the music tonight. It was beautiful. You're welcome, Mama. Maya helped her mother to bed, then returned to the living room. The trophy sat on the shelf now, next to a photo of Lynn from 20 years ago, young and strong, holding baby Maya. The crystal caught the streetlight from outside. glowing softly in the dark. Maya picked up her notebook and flipped through the pages. Months of her mother's melodies. Fragments of Lynn's mind preserved in ink and paper, each one a small victory against time, against forgetting, against loss. She opened to a fresh page and began to write. Not notation this time, but words. Composition number 2, she wrote at the top. For Mama, because one piece wasn't enough, would never be enough. Maya would spend the rest of her life taking her mother's music and making it permanent, making it matter, making sure that long after both of them were gone, someone somewhere would hear these melodies and know that Lin Chen had lived, had loved, had created beauty in the middle of struggle, that Lin's music had always been real. Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Inside, Maya worked by lamplight, building bridges between past and future, memory and creation, a mother and a daughter. The music played on.